Hey students, this is lesson 4.1. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to identify congruent figures and what parts of those are congruent. Go ahead and do this review. I'll check back with you. All right, so here's what we're going to use today. Congruent polygons have congruent corresponding parts. That is, their matching sides and angles. When you name congruent polygons, you must list the corresponding vertices in the same order. So notice that's done here. A, B, C, D. Notice A corresponds to E, so they're in the same place. So use the figure out right to complete each congruent statement. Go ahead and do that. I'll check back with you. All right, problem 1 here, using congruent parts. You should be able to recognize the congruent parts by the way the objects are written. So we have two quadrilaterals here, quadrilateral RSTU, and it's congruent to WXYZ. So if we want to name the corresponding parts, they're in the same order. So that would tell us that angle R is congruent to angle W. Angle S is congruent to angle X. Angle T is congruent to angle Y. And angle U is congruent to angle Z. Likewise, the segments should be in the same order also. So segment RS is congruent to segment WX. Segment ST is congruent to segment XY. Segment TU is congruent to segment YZ. And the last one, segment UR, is congruent to segment ZW. All right, I'll let you try that. All right, so finding congruent parts. So the sides of the roof suggest congruent triangles. What is the measure of angle 1? So what they're saying here is we have this 48-degree angle. It's congruent to this 48, so that's a 48-degree angle. Obviously, these sides are congruent because they're marked that way. All right angles are congruent. And so we want to know the measure of angle 1. So from either of these, what we can do is use our triangle angle sum theorem and add them up. So 48 plus 90 plus the measure of angle 1 is equal to 180. And then we'll just simplify this and we get 138 plus m. Measure of angle 1 is 180. Subtract 138 from both sides and we get the measure of angle 1 equals 42. So we're going to answer that C. All right, I'll let you try that. All right, problem 3, finding congruent triangles. Are the triangles congruent? The way we would justify this is if all the corresponding parts are congruent. So all 3 angles are congruent and all 3 sides are congruent to the corresponding parts from the other one. So if we look at this, we can see that AB is congruent to AD. And that's given. We are given that BC is congruent to DC. We are given that angle B is congruent to angle D. So all of these are given by the drawing. Now, but we still have a few things left to do here. We have to show one more side. So we have 2 sides here. So we need one more side. Let's do that right now on that side, AC, and that's both of them. So we're just going to say AC is congruent to AC, and that's by the reflexive property of congruence. So now we have three sides, and we just need to show that the other two angles are congruent, and we can show that angle BCA is congruent to angle BCA. And that, our reason for that, our justification, we say, well, they're a linear pair, and ACB equals 90, so BCA must also equal 90 because they're a linear pair. That means they are supplementary, and if we subtract 90 from 180, we get 180. So I'm not going to write out all the reasons, but we'll just put they're a linear pair, and 180 minus 90 is 90, so they're congruent. Okay, and then so we need one more angle. We need to show that angle BCA is congruent to angle DAC. And the way we would do that is we would use the triangle angle sum theorem. We have two of the angles already that are congruent. And so if we, and I'll just do this real quick here, I'm not going to do a formal proof, but so my three angles add up to 180, and my three angles from the other add up to 180. I'll just call them B, E, and F. Okay, and we've already shown that two of them are congruent, so we could say that these two are congruent to these two. And since they both add up to 180, they're equal to each other. So A plus B plus C equals D plus E plus F. And if two of them are the same from both, we can subtract the same from both sides, and we get the last two are equal. And so we'd be using the triangle angle sum theorem and some properties of equality there to figure that one out. All right, so yeah, they're congruent. All right, you try that. All right, so this one you don't really have enough information to allow you to prove that they're congruent. Remember on the last one we had the right angle here, and that helped a lot. So, all right, theorem 4.1, third angle theorem. If two angles of one triangle are congruent to two angles of another triangle, then the third angles are congruent. This would have been nice to help us in the last justification. So if the measure of angle A equals 74, then the measure of angle D equals 74. If the measure of angle B is 44, then the measure of angle E is 44. If the measure of angle C is 62, then the measure of angle F is 62 by the third angle theorem. So we have two angles that were already congruent, so the third one must be congruent. All right, let's use that here in this proof. So given RS is congruent to S to RU and TS is congruent to TU, we're going to prove, and all these other things are given, we're going to prove the two triangles are congruent. All right, I'm going to stop and write out the proof so I'm not explaining the whole time and using a bunch of time, and then you can check back. So notice I numbered them because if you're proving two triangles congruent, then there's 6 corresponding parts that we need to show are the same. And each of those, we were given 2 sides, that's in red here, so those were given, so we just had one left to prove there. And we did that by the reflexive property, because they're really the same side, that's this one right here. And then we were given 2 sets of angles were congruent. And so we just had one left to prove, and by the theorem, we just learned, the third angle theorem, if 2 angles out of the 3 are congruent on 2 triangles, then the third one will also be true. All right, I'm going to let you do this last problem. I'll check back with you. All right, That's the end of the lesson. Go ahead and do the lesson check and be ready to share that next time we meet in class.